nearly time for us to turn our attentions to Russia as the World Cup 2018 is set to begin. This is the Odds Checker preview podcast. This time in a week, we'll just be getting over that dramatic 1-0 victory for Russia over Saudi Arabia, which we all cannot wait for. I'm joined by three expert guests. To my left, I have Joe Bruin from FourFourTwo. Great to have you here, Joe.
Hello, nice to be here.
And we've got Ben McAleer from Who Scored as well.
Hi there, great to be here.
And a rivals Who Scored in FourFourTwo in some respects. I hope you guys don't start fighting across the table at all.
Just lean across and
and Sandro De Michele. He sounds like a terrible Argentinian centre back, but he's actually the PR man from Sky Bet. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm also a terrible English central midfielder, if that's any consolation. And you're not going to put out any rivals for me.
No.
I've already thrown them off.
Well, I mean, you're our older brother, I guess you can kind of say. So we're rivals in that respect. Let's get straight into it. Firstly, before we go into the tips and going through what's going to happen in the World Cup, I want to speak to you all about what listeners and viewers can expect from all you guys. And coming to you first, Sandro, I mean, what people who bet with Sky Bet, what can they expect to see that's new on site? People who don't bet with Sky Bet, why should they ahead of this World Cup?
So I'll get the sales pitch out the way first,
yeah.
Purely to justify the train fare down from Leeds. We've got a great offer, money back if your team get knocked out of the tournament as a free bet. So have a bet on the outright, up to £10. If your team get knocked out, you get it back as a free bet. So that's proving very, very popular. That's the sales patter out the way. What to expect? A huge array of markets. Naturally, the industry shift towards requester bets and backing single game accumulators is going to prove extremely popular. Our traders are trialling some VAR related markets. Ooh. No doubt a topic of conversation at various points this evening.
Is there a dubious bet panel if you get it, you know?
Well, it could turn out to be a bit of a customer service.
6 months after the World Cup's over.
It could be a customer services nightmare this. And interestingly, we're starting to do a lot more markets around Opta-based stats, which are proving very popular, sort of individual player performances, shots, etc., and also team-related stuff. And I think the thing that's nice about those is Opta are a very trusted, reliable third-party source that people respect. So they're going to be interesting. I think those would be probably the real kind of growth areas. But as you can imagine, a tournament of this size, basically any single market that has been priced up or could be priced up has been priced up by our traders. It's
interesting that you mentioned your offer, because Sky Bet are best price on the four outsiders: Tunisia, Iran, Panama or Saudi Arabia. So if you are going to back those guys, you can do it for free basically, because you can get your tenner back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there was a bit of a sort of a theory from some people in our marketing team that, you know, you're going to work out, you're going to go on this voyage of discovery, you're going to find out who your second team is, and then you're going to end up having a throwaway bet on an outsider because you get your stake back anyway. Interestingly though, we've seen a lot of money for the usual suspects, as you would expect at a tournament like the World Cup.
You mentioned Opta as well, which is a nice segue into Who Scored. I mean, anyone who doesn't know about Who Scored, it's an unbelievable database of football stats, individual player stats. If you want to find out about a player, I can't recommend looking at Who Scored more, and an unbelievable match engine to boot as well. So is it more of the same, Ben, basically just providing the best kind of statistical analysis of the World Cup?
Yeah, we'll be covering every game in depth with full coverage from Opta. We already have our pre-EMAG available for download, so that's free to go. We've got the articles building up to it, but yeah, we'll basically cover every game. We'll have the ratings, we'll have all the stats as well.
And if you are going to, Sandro mentioned the requester bets and the player-related bets, presumably you guys are a pretty good source to find out stuff like, who's shooting from outside the area and all that stuff.
Yeah, we obviously we have, there's the ones that are on the site available, and then you can just trawl through it for days and get lost. There are some things I'm still finding. I've been there for over 5 years now, so there's hidden gems in there that's definitely worth looking into.
And Joe, any football fan, I think, is fully aware of what FourFourTwo and the amazing content you guys have been doing for so long. Presumably, it's business as usual, churning out just great stuff throughout the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. The new issue of the magazine has just been released, which is about the World Cup stars. Online, we've got our World Cup Wonderland Hub, which is kind of a haven of interview stories from yesteryear, as well as the kind of more modern features that we have every single day on the site.
Anyone, I was going to say anyone who hasn't seen on our site, both FourFourTwo and Who Scored have done some really, really good preview stuff as well.
Yeah, I think today we did the bet under 23s to look out for. So there'll be Gabriel Jesus, one of the players involved in there, someone who can basically do no wrong at the moment, whoever he's playing for club or country. So this one was a big one for him.
Absolutely. Right, time to get into the betting now. And we're going to start where we always should start, at the beginning. And before we look at the more general markets and the group betting, it's easy to forget that we've got a lot of football matches coming up as soon as the tournament starts. 3 games a day starting from Friday. Looking at that first round of fixtures, looking at the first group of games, in the match betting, Sandra, where do you think there's going to be value?
I've looked through the prices. Generally, the market is unbelievably accurate. So I'm saying I'm sitting on the fence here, right? And there are masses of bets to be had. I'm going to go for a slightly different take, and I've sort of touched on VAR. I think VAR could cause absolute havoc in the opening sort of round of fixtures. Not all the way through the group stage, but I think maybe the first 3 or 4 days. And I think there's a couple of angles to probably get with. I think if you finding a way of penalties being awarded in a game, I think could be a nice way to go. I think red cards being awarded could be another interesting angle. And I also think, and these are the sorts of markets that will probably be priced up a day or 2 before, but something around, if firms are betting on injury time and minutes of injury time awarded in first and predominantly second halves of games, I think if you could find a way of maybe multiplying up across a few games, I think there could be some quite interesting stuff. That would be sort of as a slightly more quirkier angle, but I just
cashing in on the chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a real sort of unknown quantity. We've seen it work to limited success in some countries, and I think the biggest challenge in all of it is there's so much uncertainty, and nobody really knows exactly what's happening a lot of the time in the stadium, and that filters through to fans in the stadium, that filters through to us watching on TV, but that also impacts traders trying to price these markets up, and I think there could be some opportunity to be had there.
Interestingly, trying to translate that into something early on for listeners and viewers, Russia, Saudi Arabia, our opener, 3-1, go Paddies and Ball Sports, there'll be a penalty in that game. So maybe if there's going to be early controversy, that could be something to make the most of. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, there's obviously being half Italian, I love a conspiracy theory, but I do also think Russia, I think it's in everybody's interests, specifically FIFA's, that maybe Russia get on the right side of a few decisions, as we've seen in other tournaments as well. The tournaments benefit from having the host nation do well, at least get out of the group stage. So I wouldn't be surprised if there were a couple of reffing decisions that may be questionable, they go in the favour of the host, I don't think there's anything particularly controversial in that.
Well, I just hope you're going to see the beginning of the World Cup. You're not going to be poisoned outside of Zizzi's in Leeds now after saying that. But no, I see what you mean.
I would get poisoned probably for eating in a Zizzi's by my dad. That would be the reason why.
But I wonder why Russia are the price they are to win the whole thing. I think it could just be Mr. Putin's money just moving the market, because they are seemingly very short. But we'll get to that later. Joe, coming to you now. First group of games, all very exciting. Where are you looking at for the value?
Well, in your intro, you talked about a 1-0 win for Russia, and I'm going to go completely against that. You'll notice throughout the course of the show, I might talk about some outside shots, because
perfect.
As Sandro said, the market does look quite accurate, and there's not a great deal that stands out straight away. But for one team to win a single game, you can get 13-1 for Saudi Arabia to beat Russia in the opening game, and my faith there is placed more in Russia's ineptitude than actually Saudi Arabia's ability, because this is a Russia team that's in a bit of disarray at the moment. Preparations for this tournament have not been good. They had a horrible Confederations Cup. This is a very ageing team who will possibly feel the pressure of being at home. And Saudi Arabia will come here, first tournament since 2002, with nothing to lose, really.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And, considering I'm flying out there on Thursday evening, I really hope you're wrong, because I think we might not be as welcome as we once were if Russia do lose the first game to Saudi Arabia. But that 13-1, as you say, with black type, and it does seem a big price for a team, just to win a game of football against not a very good team.
You can get 11-5 for the Saudi draw, double chance, if you're more of a conservative better. Might be more appealing there, but I think there's definitely a bit of value in betting against Russia in this one, just because they've got a very old team and with not much prospect, to be honest, in this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben, where are we looking for the first round?
I'm going to play it a bit safer, and I'm liking the look of Denmark to beat Peru. Peru obviously going to be boosted by Paulo Guerrero's availability, but Denmark have got such a very strong spine to their team. I mean, you've got a lot of Premier League experience in there, and Eriksen, Christensen, Schmeichel. They haven't lost a non-FIFA game since 2016 when they lost 1-0 to Montenegro. They breezed past Republic of Ireland. to make it to the World Cup. And it's a safe bet, but it'll set you on the front foot going forward early on. So I think Denmark's beat Peru.
Interesting having the Spurs fan talking about Christian Eriksen's Denmark beating Peru in the first game. That's 16-11 with Unibet best price. If you're asking me, which you probably shouldn't do, I think Spain to beat Portugal at 10-11 is a bit of a banker. I think this could be a theme in the podcast where the 13-2 available for them just to win the tournament is a big price. And I think if that's a big price, then nearly even money on them beating a Portugal team who didn't win a single game in 90 minutes when they lifted the Euro 2016 looks very, very good indeed to me. Before we look at the major markets and the groups in particular, we should touch on England because when we're talking about winner and top goal scorer and golden ball, they may not get much of a mention. And at the end of the day, I think most of us are supporting England. But go to the man who says he doesn't first, and Sandro. I mean, what do you think is going to happen with this England team? And secondly, what's success? I mean, when can Gareth Southgate, pat himself on the back and say anything from here as a bonus?
What's going to happen? I'm really, really positive about the England squad and the setup, and we were touching on it briefly, weren't we, before we started recording this. I think they've got a nice balance. I think they've got a lovely sort of energy about the squad, group of players who really look like they enjoy being part of the England setup, something we haven't seen for some period of time. They actually look quite relaxed, and I think things like the media day that they did a few days ago, I think are a really interesting take by the FA and by England. They seem to be working really hard to get the media on side. I think this agenda against Raheem Sterling, the FA have done a really good job of quashing that, and Sterling himself did a really good job of coming out and giving an interview after the friendly against Nigeria. I think all of those things are really positive. I think the decision to leave out players like Jack Wilshere and Joe Hart are also positives, because I think Southgate's very mindful of having people in and around the squad that are good influences and are good people to be there. And he obviously thought Joe Hart and Wilshere weren't going to play a lot of football, if any, and maybe felt they were going to be slightly disruptive influences. So all of that makes for a real nice sort of cohesive team. And I think there's huge amounts of talent there. I think the front three of Lingard, Kane and Sterling looks really, really frightening. Yeah. Huge amounts of pace and goals in there. There are questions around the middle of the park, but all combined, I think that there's a bit of sort of humility about the group of players, that they know they're not one of the front runners. They know they're not the best team in the tournament, but they also know what they need to do to go and beat the better sides in the tournament. So that might be putting 10 men behind the ball against a Germany, for example, and playing on the counter-attack. It's something we've seen them do in friendlies in the build-up to this, predominantly against Brazil. So I think they're prepared to do that as well, and that sort of excites me, because it feels like they've just got a little bit more they're a bit more streetwise out on the pitch. So in answer to your question, yeah, I'm positive. I think success would be the quarterfinals. I think that would be viewed as success, but also to an extent what is expected.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. There's kind of a feeling that expectations are low this summer, but realistically, quarterfinals are the minimum, but they're also the maximum. Because at that point, because if you look at the group, England, they should get out of that group comfortably, and then I'm going to say it doesn't matter who you play from the next group, but the Colombia, Japan, Senegal, and Poland, it's quite an even group. You're not too fussy playing that next round, but you'd expect to beat either of them. So the thing that you have to say about it is Gareth Southgate has done an impressive job. Whatever happens this summer, he's brought a certain mentality to the group, a certain logic as well, by making sure that they're playing in formation that the best clubs in England all these players are used to. Basically, he can't suddenly magic up a crop of players who are world beaters. So.
But has that not been the case though? I think going into 2010, a lot of people would have said the same about Capello. I think going into the Euros, I think a lot of people would have said the same about Hodgson. But at the end of the day, don't international managers live and die by how they perform in major tournaments? They
do, but I think there was a feeling that in 2010 and before that England had this so-called golden generation of players, experienced players who'd been there and done that in the Premier League. They'd won Champions Leagues, whereas I think it's the third youngest England squad that's ever been to a World Cup. So expectations are lower in that respect. I think it's a reasonable expectation to get to the quarterfinals, and I think generally England fans would be quite happy if we put up a good fight in that game. Maybe you can beat a Germany. If we've proved in the friendlies, as Sandro said, we've got goalless draws against Germany and Brazil, proving that there is a certain level of defensive stability there. And I think that's going to be the platform from which we hopefully build on.
That's also quite key in that Southgate has worked with Loftus-Cheek, Kane, Lingard as well, so he's familiar with all of these players, which just obviously boosts the team. They're familiar with the manager, who has obviously got a system in place, as Joe said, about which the best teams in England are playing at the moment, which, you know, quietly will boost morale ahead of the tournament, which is good to see.
I think I agree with that. I think that point around Southgate having worked with the players previously is probably downplayed as well. And I think that's part of the reason why they enjoy going to England camps so much, because a lot of these lads have played together before. They've been part of Southgate's setup, and they did fairly well under Southgate when he was under 21 manager. And I think all of that leads towards this real positivity. I actually think we'll find out more about how good this England side are in the opening 2 games. The Belgium game, I think, is neither here nor there. I think England can get a result against Belgium. They might beat them, they might get beaten, they might get a draw. But I think if they can go out and have the ability to break down Tunisia and Panama in a way that England sides have struggled to do at major tournaments previously, I think that could be a real good indicator of just how good this England team are and how sort of tactically aware they are.
You're looking for a repeat of that first half against Nigeria, basically, aren't you? Where it was dominant. You know, it was a case of how many can England get, not whether they were going to win that game. Obviously, there was a little bit of a drop off, which is a slight concern. I think there's such a good mentality around this team. The players clearly get on with each other, and there's a massive respect for Southgate as well. You know, even his handling of the Raheem Sterling being late situation, which was awful timing after the tabloid nonsense that went before it, but he dealt with it well. He just said, look, you know, he kind of gave him a little scolding, said apologise, and he did, and it's moved on. That's it. It's forgotten. And I think that's you know, he's really impressive in his work so far.
If you're looking at the stage of elimination odds, last 16 is 11-5, same price as quarter-final, which is also 11-5, which surprises me because I'd have thought the quarter-final would be favourite, given that England will likely get a favourable draw in that second round if they do get through the groups. Semi-final 11-2, group stage 13-2, runner-up 12-1, winner 18-1. Those are all best prices that you can find on the Odds Checker site. Before we move away from England, I just want to look at for every single team on our site, we have top team goal scorer odds, and I think that Kane could be a little bit too short in the England one, purely, I mean, he's obviously one of the best goal scorers in the world, but he's looked a little bit out of sorts, you have to say, since the injury, and he's 11-10 favourite. And if you're looking at the other players out there who, you know, are all very good goal scorers, you've got Raheem Sterling at 8-1 with some bets, you've got Dele Alli at 10-1 with Sky Bet, Jamie Vardy 12-1, Jesse Lingard 14-1, who looks like he could start as well. Do we think there's a bit of value in those outsiders?
Yeah, absolutely, especially with Sterling. I mean, he had 2 or 3 good chances against Nigeria, which, you know, he should have taken, but he still scored 18 goals last season in the Premier League. His finishing's come on immensely under Guardiola. He's going to be playing as the kind of most advanced attacker, because Kane, as he showed against Nigeria, will drop deep, whereas Sterling will look to occupy the defenders. Definitely a lot of value in Sterling, I think.
Sterling 8. Anyone else, you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sterling definitely, a huge fan of Raheem Sterling as a player. He just has this ability to get in goal-scoring positions constantly, doesn't he? Yeah, his finishing isn't the best, and it can improve, but it has improved, as you've said, Ben. And I think he's an interesting one. I think Lingard is an interesting one because he's proven the ability to score goals on the big stage, but for club and country. Obviously, I think the reason he is the price he is because there are just question marks around will he definitely start and how many games will he start. But I think he'll start.
Yes,
Southgate likes him, and he's a great goal scorer. I mean, he's a proven goal scorer. So at 14-1, I think there's far worse bets to be had than that.
Given that he's the same price, best price as Rashford. Rashford's shorter in most places, but you'd think that Lingard's now ahead of him in the pecking order. So certainly some juice there. Moving away from England now, and that could be the last time, as I said, we may discuss them, unless you're going to mention them now, guys. Looking at the group betting, mainly who do we think are the vulnerable favourites here to go out, and who do we think of the minnows maybe? Joe, coming to you first, who do we think could squeak through into the second round?
If you're talking about minnows, well, I'm going to talk about Argentina to start with, as a team that I think could be in a bit of trouble. I mean, yes, you would expect them to get through that group, but so, you know, you look at their front line and think, you know, wow, I wouldn't like to play against them. But in reality, only one team scored fewer goals than they did in South American qualifying, which is Bolivia, which is crazy when you think about it. But ultimately, they're undermined by a goalkeeper who go into this tournament who doesn't even have a cap yet, or he's played very, very little. Defence is dodgy, and a midfield that's not great either. So they could be undermined by that. in a what's a tricky group in Croatia, Nigeria, and Iceland, and just going back quickly to the opening game bets. Iceland draw no bet is 8-1. I think that's a great offer.
Yeah, so 6-1 Argentina are to not to qualify, and Argentina draw no bet, just to make sure that we have the right market up, just in case there is better out there for the guys to be had. Iceland, 8-1 draw no bet. That's with Unibet. Coming to you next, Ben. Who do you think is vulnerable? Who do you think? What group are you looking at for that bit of interest?
I can't not focus on Group B. I think the big game between Portugal and Spain will be crucial. Portugal kind of fluked their way to an extent to the European Championship. They didn't win a game inside 90 minutes. They drew their 3 group games and got through luckily. And you just get the impression that lightning can't strike twice. Their centre backs are well beyond their peak, and I feel like if they don't get a result against Spain, which will be tough, then they're in trouble, I think.
Yeah, Morocco are 4-1 best price to qualify. You can get just a shade over 3s on Portugal to get knocked out early, and I do agree with you. I think they're very, very vulnerable indeed. Sandro, where are we looking early doors?
Obviously, the bookmaker in me wants to get after favourites. So there are 2. I completely agree with everything Joe said about Argentina.
Yeah.
I think they're a pretty average side. I can't believe the price they are in the outright. They scraped through qualification. Defensively, they're poor. Sampaoli insists on playing Mascherano as a centre half, and as soon as he comes up against any centre forward bigger than about 5'5", he gets bullied. So Argentina definitely, and I'd also, being the sort of the punter in me, I'd probably chuck a few darts. I like Argentina not to qualify at 6-1. Have a go at them to finish bottom at 33-1, because we've seen in major tournaments when big nations get off to a bad start and there's a lot of big egos in a dressing room, it can just all of a sudden implode. And we've seen it with France, who are the other team I want to take on as well, are the French. I think I always feel with the French, I've got question marks around Deschamps, and I just feel they're one training ground spat away from having a huge bust up, and based on that, and again, to your point around Denmark, they're in the Denmark group, aren't they, France? And I think Denmark are a really, really talented side. I think it's a tricky group, and the 2 that I'd want to take, and again, France to finish bottom of the group at 33-1. I think they're about 11-1, 10-1 not to qualify from the group. So those would be 2 favourites that I'd be quite keen to take on.
And France, a very young squad as well, who you think that if it becomes a bit too much, could be that team to implode.
A young squad, but young talents who are sort of global superstars getting paid astronomical salaries in the game. I'm thinking Mbappe and Pogba and those guys, and I just wonder, Griezmann, another one, if things don't start to click, I just wonder how. I think there are a lot of people who want to be top dog in that team, and I'm not sure how Deschamps is going to be able to sort of manage all those egos, and I just have my doubts about them. I think them and Argentina.
Just continuing in that group, we haven't really spoken about Peru at all yet, but I really like them to qualify at 2-1 with Paddy Power. They haven't lost since November 2016. They've won 5 in a row quite comfortably as well. They've only conceded 1 goal in those games and scored quite regularly as well. They've obviously got Paulo Guerrero back, and I think they could beat Denmark to that second place and maybe even top the group.
But I think also the thing that's great about the tournaments is if you do have a view about a nation that you don't like, there are so many different markets that you can find an angle on. So if you don't like France, I think Australia are being slightly underplayed. I don't think they're obviously not world beaters, but they will be a very, very difficult side to break down, won't they? And they've their approach in qualifying was exactly that, very difficult to break down. And there's also a sort of value to be had in the dual forecast. So maybe you go for a Peru-Denmark dual forecast or something like that if you're really strong against France. And the same applies in the Argentina group. Do you look at sort of Croatia-Iceland or something like that as a dual forecast in that group? I think like in answer to your question, the 2 I'd be getting after are Argentina and France.
Understandably so. You mentioned Peru-Denmark there. That is 16-1 with Sky Bet for that dual forecast. So they finish either order, that you're basically just laying France and Australia. For me, I'm looking at that last group, the one that England will face if they do get through the group. And I think that Colombia are being priced up as way too short a price favourite there. At 13-8 best price to win the group. I think that people are looking back at that, their performance in favourable conditions in Brazil 4 years ago. And I think without James, you take James out, there's not much there. And I think Senegal have massively overpriced as well. They are 5-1 with Hills to win that group, and I think that given a team with Sadio Mane, a world-class forward up there, and Koulibaly at the back as well, they've got a really important spine. And in what looks like the easiest group to me, and then neither Belgium or England, if they do play them in the second round, are necessarily that great as well. I think they could go further than people expect. So that's my tuppence. But looking at the major markets now, I think the markets that people like to look at the most, the one that people spend most time on, and let's go from the top. Let's look at the winner market and where does the value lie here. I mean, we've got, just going through the prices now, we've got Brazil best price 9-2, that's with Sky Bet. Germany best price 5-1, also with Sky Bet. Spain 13-2, France 13-2, Argentina 10-1, Belgium 11-1, England 20-1, Portugal 27-1, and then about 33-1 bar, that's Uruguay. Guys, unravel it for me. Where are we looking?
I like Spain. I tipped Germany to win in the Who Scored mag, but I like Spain's price. Yeah, exactly. I like Spain to win. I think their odds are very good, all things considered. They've just got such depth in midfield, and up front they're a bit questionable. Costa's, has only played half a season. Aspas, where they can transfer that excellent season onto the international stage, and Rodrigo as well. There are a couple of question marks on the front line, but it's just that midfield. I mean, Busquets will control things. Got Thiago Silva, Iniesta. All of them can just pull teams apart.
Is there a concern about Lopetegui, their manager, not having managed in an international tournament before, and therefore is he the right man to get the most out of that group of players?
He has a youth
level, yeah.
I think there's enough experience in that squad to do it as well. Actually, I'd completely agree with Spain on there as well, purely for their defence to start with. You have to go back to Italia 90 for the last winner to concede more than 4 goals in the tournament. And if I'm looking down at those squads, you're seeing David De Gea in goal, Jordi Alba, Sergio Ramos, Gerard Piqué. You've got players like Nacho Monreal and Cesar Azpilicueta who can't even get in this team.
Yeah.
Sergio Busquets just in front.
But is that not the same unit? Is that not the same unit as the one that conceded 5 against the Dutch?
Partially, yeah, but I'd still back them over a longer time. And go back to 2010 when they won 1-0 in all of their knockout games. They've still got goals in this team as well. People are saying that yes, they're a bit light up front, but they've still got Diego Costa, Isco, a great midfield. So much depth in midfield. They could field their second choice midfield and it'd still be better than most teams out there. They would be my pick.
So as I said, 13-2, they are best price for spread expert. As Sandro said, they're 6-1 with Sky Bet, and if you did back them up to a tenner and they were knocked out, you'd get your tenner back. Sandro, where are you looking?
It's going to sound like we've all colluded. I can't get enough of Spain. I think they're exceptional for every point the lads have just raised there, and both of them, and forget to mention one player who I think is going to have an amazing tournament, and that's David Silva. I think he's. I think interestingly, the goal scoring angle is interesting because they get goals from everywhere without sort of. You wouldn't back Diego Costa with any real confidence in like a top goal scorer market or something, but I would back Isco or David Silva with huge confidence in a top goal scorer market. And I think, and then that's not to mention some of the other players, not to mention Sergio Ramos, who gets his fair share of goals. So based on that, I really, really like the Spanish. I'd probably have them as favourites ahead of Brazil, to be honest.
It's funny, people that I've spoken to aren't really backing Spain either, so it's quite funny that the 3 of us around the table are doing the same. I think people are getting swept up by the emotion of Brazil because everyone loves Brazil. And they were astonishing in qualifying. They qualified much earlier than everyone else, and they do have a formidable team. But I look at that defence and I think there's definitely dodginess there. Dani Alves is out. I'm not sure they can replace him properly. Marcelo. And even Thiago Silva, he's not that formidable force he once was. So I'd be looking at weaknesses in that Brazil team.
I mean, I will say that if naturally 6-1 shots aren't everyone's cup of tea, are they? Or people might like back a 6-1 shot and then like to have an outsider. I've had a couple of quid on England for the reasons I mentioned earlier, and I've also had a couple of quid on Serbia at a huge price, sort of 200
to 1 there. Yeah,
200 odd to 1. They're in that Brazil group, interestingly. I really like the way the team's set up. They qualified fairly well, nothing amazing, but decent enough. But I like Mitrovic. I really like Milinko Savic from Lazio, and I think they could surprise a few. Are they going to win it? No, but could you get a run for your money and give yourself the chance to cash out? and nick a profit, then yeah.
And it's all about value as well. I mean, that's the way to think about it. I was trying to explain to the lads in the office yesterday, you don't have to think they're going to win for it to be a bet, guys. It's just, if you think it's a good bet. I mean, I agree with you about Serbia, and I think the one that I really like, a Uruguay at 33, is purely, I mean, 4 years ago they're a far superior team to us, and I think they've still got that key core to their squad. In Cavani and Suarez up top, they've got players who will tear apart the weaker teams. And if you look at their route to the quarters, they've got an easy group, the easiest group there is, obviously, because they've been drawn with Russia. And then their second round game, if they do win that group, should be Portugal. And if you're asking me,
or maybe not.
Or,
it's better.
Or Morocco,
Yeah,
effectively. But I think it's very unlikely they're not going to get to the quarters. And if they're in the quarters, there's no way they're a 33 to 1 shot there. So in pure value, and as you say, maybe you can green out for a bit of prof. I think that Uruguay is where my money's going to go. Any more in terms of the outsiders? Do you think there's any other sleepers there who could surprise a few people?
The problem is this year, the four strongest teams do look very, very powerful, and it's difficult to look past them. In terms of outside value, I mean, Belgium, they're an unknown quantity, really, aren't they? Because
or they're just a known.
They're
not
a
some of their
known
parts
batch,
quantity,
but
yeah.
you look at them and think, how can you not do well?
I know.
Great group, great second round game. They could beat anyone on the day.
You know the thing that my biggest concern about Belgium is the manager.
Yeah.
If I'm honest. I, as a group of players, there's no doubt about their talent. There's a little bit of the Dutch about them, sort of egos and what have you, but they seem pretty happy and they score goals for fun, don't they? So, but the manager would be the big concern for me, because I also felt 2 years ago at the Euros, they probably weren't as good as they are now, but they were very good and very highly regarded and respected. And again, the manager let them down. They tactically got played off the park by the Italians in the opening game of the tournament, and then obviously lost to Wales, didn't they? Yeah.
I think it's very easy to forget just how disliked Mark Wilmot was within that squad. So the fact that they have a manager that they at least like, presumably,
except for Rajan Anglan, I heard.
Except for Rajan, but I think it was coming in terms of they've never had that relationship, have they? So
someone was saying to me earlier that I think Martinez Belgium under Martinez haven't beaten a top 40 FIFA ranked side yet, which I think shows some severe weakness given the squad that they've got.
I think he made a couple of questionable decisions in his final squad selections. Obviously, there's the Nyangalan issue that was mentioned, but the inclusion of Chadley still irks me because he hasn't played a full 90 minutes since August against Accrington Stanley. He's only played 216 minutes of league action this season. I mean, you can't call upon a player who has featured so little.
If it irks you, imagine how much it must irk West Brom.
I think it highlights that desperation they've got him for fullback, basically, because the fact that they're even considering using him as a second choice left back tells you how bad things are.
Was it they omitted actual wing back Jordan Lukaku as well to bring him in, which is
Jordan Lukaku's had a decent season at Lazio as well, hasn't he? He's played well in their sort of Europa League run, and interesting. But I do think that they could probably spank Panama. I think they'll probably win their group, won't they? Purely on goal difference or something.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Southgate does in that Belgium game, if it matters, because you mentioned the fullback issues they've got, and if Kyle Walker, I think we've agreed he's going to start on the right hand side of that three. But I think if we're playing Belgium, needing a result, you've got to stick him back in that right wing back role just to make the most of that defensive weakness.
You never know; it might suit England not to win the game based on how that Group G is panning out as well.
But then who's the good draw in there as well, though? That's the question.
Exactly.
So that's the winner market. I think we can all agree that if you're backing Russia at 40 to 1, you need your head checked, unless you think that there's some kind of a fix going on, in which case please let me know and I'll get involved. Looking now at the golden ball, and there's one, before I ask you guys what you think, there's one player that I want to bring up who I think we should talk about a bit anyway, and that's Andres Iniesta. Given that you guys all think that Spain are the bet to win it, surely at 40 to 1, given the romance surrounding it, given the fact he's going to play there, that has to be a price.
You basically took the words
right out
of my mouth.
I meant to be a host.
This is Andres Iniesta is exactly the type of player who will get the golden ball. It's like when Ryan Giggs got what was the award? Sports Personality of the Year.
Yeah.
It was because of that romance. And Iniesta, Spain. If you're basically looking at a team that was going to do well, and a player who's going to play a lot, and if you add that romance in, I think Iniesta is a fantastic fit for that. I think
that's the first time anyone's mentioned gigs and romance throughout 6 years, but you agree about any?
I couldn't agree more. I always think this market's a really nice market to get a bit of a value bet on. If you've got a strong view on a team, at the Euros 2 years ago, I really liked Italy, and as a result, You could have backed Italy at about 16s, 20s for the tournament, or you could have backed Buffon at about 66 to 1 to be player of the tournament. And there are sort of things that just make sense. If a team are going to do well and are going to get to the latter stages of a tournament, then it stands to reason that, you know, like 2 years ago, Buffon would have been key in that, in this case, Iniesta. Then you sort of tie in this kind of long service award. There's also another interesting angle that Mark Langdon at the Racing Post brought up around Adidas's involvement with FIFA.
Alleged.
Yeah. Well, certainly their sponsorship and work with FIFA, the partnership they have, and you start digging into players that wear Adidas boots compared to players that wear Nike boots.
I can tell you that Iniesta wears Nike boots, which is a blur.
But it's an interesting one. The other one on the Spain theme is David Silva. I like David Silva as a bet in the Golden Ball as well. But I think this is always a really interesting market because there's a few nice little angles that do represent big value.
Silva is 33 to 1. Ben, where are you looking as well?
I'm going to stick with Spain. We're going to go for Isco. He's been arguably Spain's best player over the last sort of 12, 18 months. He's just been, I mean, he's great at club level. He's great for Real Madrid. But for Spain, he's just taken he's been, head and shoulders above all of their players as the best player. I like his price. I think it was 26s.
33s.
33s
yeah,
now.
33s around. Yeah.
Obviously, there's the Iniesta. There's the emotion around his final big tournament. But I think Isco's going to be key if they get to the final and eventually win the tournament.
And interesting, David De Gea at 80 to 1 as well. If you're thinking about great keepers and teams built on defences.
I assume Isco would be in the young player of the tournament as well, would he?
Yeah, I don't know if there's currently a market on it. I'm sure there will be as we get closer to the...
I've been told reliably by one of our traders, Sky Bet have a market on it, but
there you go. Well,
naively, I didn't go and check.
We've got to make sure we link it up onto our site tomorrow then, because I think we're the only ones. But yeah,
I'd love to see what price Isco is for that, because I mean, he'd be an absolute shoo-in, wouldn't he, for that, to be honest?
Yeah.
You would think. If you're on the Spain train like we all are.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk about the Golden Boot shortly, but 70 to 1 best price for Isco is phenomenal as well. For a player who scored a hat-trick against Argentina recently.
I tell you what, if things go wrong, we're all going to be crying into our Rioja.
That's why. I mean, I think
2 weeks time,
for the sake of balance for people here who don't fancy Spain, we should talk about a couple of other players. And at the top of the market, there's no surprise to see Neymar at 8 to 1, who scored that magnificent goal coming back from injury in the friendly. Lionel Messi, the winner from 4 years ago, possibly undeserved winner, I would say. And then Cristiano Ronaldo at 20 to 1. Obviously, given the fact that Portugal are less likely to get there.
So I find this strange, right? So why would you? I don't understand why you back Ronaldo at 20 to 1 to win the Golden Ball when you could back Portugal at 25.
Same as Suarez, it's 33.
Yeah, same price. It doesn't really make sense to me because you've pretty much got to get to the final, haven't you? I would say to be within a real serious shout of winning the award, and. I just wouldn't be in a hurry to back Ronaldo. Ronaldo's got to do something pretty amazing, or he's got to go and score 9 or 10 goals in the tournament and get knocked out in the semis. And it doesn't seem at those prices.
That's basically what Diego Forlan had to do to get it last time. He scored phenomenal goals and lots of them in the last tournament, 2010, sorry. And that's how he got his. So yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you're not backing Ronaldo in that situation, are you? You're backing Portugal, which seems like a silly thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talking of goals now, it's time to talk about the top goal scorer market. We've seen in the last few years, normally it's outsiders who seem to come up trumps here. So I'll go through the top ones anyway. Lionel Messi is the 10 to 1 favourite. Neymar 12 to 1. We've got Antoine Griezmann at 12 to 1. Cristiano Ronaldo, best price with Sky Bet at 16 to 1. Harry Kane 17 to 1. Gabriel Jesus 20. Timo Werner 20 to 1. Romelu Lukaku 20 to 1, and then Cavani and Suarez 30s, Lewandowski 33s, and the rest bigger. Although Thomas Müller the same price 33s. Are we looking at this top end, Sandro? Are we gonna try and dig for some value down the bottom?
I generally don't look at the top end of these kinds of markets, but purely that's more my sort of like my betting style. I've had a bit of an interesting bet on Smolov of Russia. 106.
You should have sent. I'd have laid it. You should have sent it to me first.
Backed him each way because I think Russia would at least get to the last 16. And
I think you're now just sucking up with Mr. Putin now.
Trying not to get poisoned.
We know you're listening, Vlad.
So yeah, but I wouldn't sort of be in a hurry to encourage people to do that. But I want to find some kind of angle to get with Russia, and I felt that might be one of the better ones. I do like a David Silva at sort of 80s or something like that would be a bet for me. Isco, again, to your point, Joe, I think Isco's interesting. If you wanted someone at a shorter price, I don't think you could put anybody off either Hazard or Lukaku, because I do feel, I think there are a couple of, probably only two sides that might be classed as whipping boys in the tournament. You won't agree with me, Joe. I think Saudi Arabia might be whipping boys.
Oh no, they definitely are. This is absolutely a heart over head decision. It's terrible.
And the other ones I think are Panama, and I just think Belgium have proven they've got plenty of goals in them. So based on that, I think Belgium might dish out a bit of a paste into them, and Lukaku or as you fancy Lukaku or Hazard to maybe get a few goals in that. So yeah, so I'd say Lukaku at the front of the market, Smolov or one of the Spanish boys at the bottom end of the market.
Hazard 50-1. Interestingly, before I ask you guys, we haven't really spoken about France too much, and there was one player that caught my eye here, and that's Ousmane Dembele, who's available at 125-1 with sixth place of the Paddies. And he's a player who looks like he's going to start in that really exciting three alongside Mbappe and Griezmann. A player who had his injury troubles for Barcelona, but you'd expect that if France are to, I know we've been cautious about them already, and so they could go out, but you do expect them, if they are to catch fire, to be a pretty explosive team. He could be a very interesting player to look out for.
No, I agree. If you're looking for value, then someone like that will definitely take the fancy. I mean, what you're looking for when you're looking for a golden boot share, you're looking for someone who's definitely going to play. There's always a risk of not doing that. Make sure they're going to play. Favourable fixtures in the group, because all it takes is one game. Look at Oleg Solenko in 1994.
Yeah.
Basically won the golden boot on one game. And then a team that's going to get far. So if you combine all of those things, then yeah, Dembele's got a shout. I've already mentioned Isco. I have actually put my money where my mouth is on Timo Werner.
Nice.
Purely because
I was about to say, we haven't mentioned the defending champions.
I know.
I mean, the problem with Germany is that Joachim Löw has experimented in recent weeks, so we're not 100% sure that Timo Werner will play, but I think he will. Because if it's a choice between him or Mario Gomez, you would expect Werner to get the nod. He's more mobile, he should be able to pull apart defences in the group. He's got a good goal-scoring pedigree, he's got a good record for Germany so far. He should play, Germany should go far. So I think on that evidence, I quite like Timo Werner. And also Gabriel Jesus is another one, slightly more dodgy. I'm trying to avoid teams where there could be a bit of a split between goals.
Yeah.
Obviously Neymar is the man for Brazil, and they play to his strengths. But again, we need his one game, and Brazil have got quite a favourable group. And at 20-1, with I think Unibet at the best price,
both
20-1.
those two, yeah.
I'd be keen on him as well.
Unibet 20-1, but no each trade terms there. Spread X 20-1 on Gabriel Jesus, and you get quarter the four with them. Ben, where are you looking?
Going to stick with Germany, and I do like Thomas Müller. He scored 5 goals at 2014. He's got 10 World Cup final goals, and if he can just get a good run of form, he obviously pops up at the right place at the right time, is what he does best. I mean, he's not going to play as a number 9 like he did 4 years ago. He's likely to come off from the right in that 4-2-3-1, but it's just that knack for just scoring and just being there to score.
And he seems to love playing with Mesut Ozil as well. I mean, who wouldn't? But that seems to bring the best out of him for Germany.
He can become the first player to score 5 goals at 3 different World Cups as well. So there's a little bit of a record on the line for him.
I also like Cavani as well. The easy group. He scored more goals than any other player in South American qualifying. He got 10 goals there. He comes off a good season. He scored 4 in his last 5 for Uruguay. And he said you just need one game to score a hat-trick. He's got Saudi Arabia, Egypt and Russia. Should score against all 3 of those, theoretically speaking. And he's priced up well. I like the look of Cavani.
Cavani is 33-1. Before we move on, and we're getting towards the end now, and at the end I'm going to ask you all for your best bet of the World Cup. If you could have one bet, what would it be? I'm just going to bring to your attention one more that I've only just spotted, but I think could be worth a few quid, and that's, sorry West Ham fans, Javier Hernandez at 150-1. Going on what you were saying about being assured of a starting place. I mean, his only job in this World Cup is going to be to score goals, and a Mexico, a team who I think a few people fancy to maybe outrun their odds.
Yeah, I mean, Mexico were really good in qualifying. They absolutely smashed the USA out of the park, basically. If you're asking me for my one bet,
Yeah.
okay, it's a bit of a ludicrous one.
Yes.
So I don't know. I've got a real thing about Sweden, and I don't think they're very good. I don't think they're very good.
Right.
So you can get 33 to 1 for them to be the lowest scoring team at the tournament, and I think they've got a pretty tough group. If you look at their recent results, they're not good at all. So there's a 0-0 draw with Denmark, 1-0 defeat to Romania, a 2-1 defeat to someone who I can't even read my own writing there.
They're that bad.
Exactly. 1-1 draw with Estonia, 0-0 draw with Italy, and obviously they beat them in the playoff. But I just don't think there's that many goals in that team, and I think I wouldn't be looking at them to do very well. So 33 to 1, lowest scoring team. It's definitely an outside bet, but I do quite like it.
I think it's an absolute cracker.
You know, on that theme, this isn't my best bet. It's just someone else's best bet.
Truly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just got to listen to the people that really know what they're talking about. Portugal lowest scoring team at 100 to 1. The chances are with that market it ends up being a dead heat.
You're basically looking for a team just to not score.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if you're of the opinion that Portugal aren't any good, and quite a lot of people are, you expect them to get beaten in the first game. They then play Iran and Morocco, don't they? I think they're the other two teams in the group. Iran and Morocco combined in their 16 qualifying matches only conceded 2 goals, didn't they? Morocco didn't concede a goal in qualification, and Iran conceded 2 in 10, I think. So based on that, they're going to be really tough teams to play against. I think the 0-0 in the Morocco-Iran game is like 5 to 1, something like that. That's unbelievably short for a goalless draw. On that premise, and if you don't like Portugal, then why wouldn't you have a couple of quid on a 100 to 1 shot? It might be a dead heat with 1 or 2 other teams, but 50s or 33s, I think you still take that.
Yeah, well, for those, I mean, I've sold their goals and the spreads for those who like spread betting at 6, which seems very high for a team who, they could even get to semi-finals and not score 6, really, Portugal. So, Ben, coming to you next, what's the best bet, the nap?
I'm liking Morocco to be the top African team. Senegal and Egypt are the favourites, but I think it's 9s, 8 or 9s. I think Morocco are too.
Morocco are 7-1.
Yeah, brilliant odds. I mean, if they can get a result in the first game against Iran, capitalise on any slip up between Portugal and Spain, they have a very good chance of going through. And then they're likely to play Uruguay, but Uruguay have a tendency, well, apart from 2010, but last year they went out quite early. Morocco will look to frustrate players, as Sandro said. They didn't concede a goal in qualifying. They have very good, experienced players in Benatia and Ziyech, and I just like the look of them to be the top African team. Yeah,
I'm going to make a fool of myself if I'm wrong about this, but I think they're unbeaten in 17 games, Morocco, which is a pretty astonishing record for going into a World Cup. I mean,
I think that's a really nice bet, that is, as well, Ben, because chances are there might only be one other team that make it to the second, one other African team that make it to the second round of the competition. So again, you're a chance of having a dead heat and getting paid out. If Senegal, if you like Senegal, you might end up with Senegal and Morocco both qualifying, and you might, So I think that's an interesting.
Morocco unbeaten since the 10th of June 2017. So coming up to their 1-year anniversary, but a lot of games in there.
Hervé Renard in charge as well, and
yeah,
he's obviously famous around the African Cup of Nations. He's the only manager to win it twice. I do like them.
Famous around Cambridge as well, after his managerial stint there about 10 years ago. But Sandro, what's yours?
I like
building a Yankee here.
Japan's finished bottom of their group. Yeah. I think they've had a managerial change recently, that they've been poor in qualifying. I think that group fascinates me, and I had an argument with someone in the office earlier who said, "Oh, you wouldn't watch that," and I think it was like Colombia, Poland or something, Senegal, Poland that night. And these are the games that fascinate me about World Cups. That group's fascinating. It's 2 out of 3, isn't it, for me, from Colombia, Senegal and Poland. Sadly, I think Japan are really going to struggle.
They've had a hopeless run going into this tournament as well. They've lost to Ghana, Ukraine and South Korea, and drawn with Mali in the last 4 games. I mean, that's terrible preparation.
You're not, like I say, you're not going to get rich. I think it's about, what was it, like 5
11 or 8 best price.
Yeah. You're not going to become a millionaire, but you've got 33 to 1 shots.
Well, if you want to become a millionaire, because mine is, if I only could have one bet for the whole World Cup, it would be Iniesta to win the Golden Ball, because not only is it cracking value, but also what a moment it would be if he did get it, and it's a good one to keep you going throughout the whole tournament. The Yankee, or the fourfold, I should say, best price is with Betway. and that is 20,808 to 1. So
Brilliant.
I think between us, we have to we have to have a £1 Yankee on that just to make sure that, because if that wins, and I send you guys an email saying you won.
I can't wait to receive a message from Alan Alger saying we've got a liability of about 20 million thanks to you guys.
Perfect. Cheers, guys, for coming on. I mean, I can't recommend reading all the stuff that 442 put out, making sure you keep up to date with all the stats and all the content coming out of who scored, and obviously punting with Sky Bet as ever. Make sure you look at the Odds Checker site as well. We've got everything on site, all the markets you need, all the best prices out there as well. We'll be back for an update on this with a very special guest after the group stages. But in the meantime, hopefully this is profitable, and fingers crossed that England will justify our optimism.